Welcome to the next episode of KapVista Klips. Today we have the team from NuCalm. How are you guys?
We're doing well, thank you.
So, Jim and Matthew, it's great to have you. I am really, really excited about this one because I have spent the last few months researching the best um, products, the best things that I can take for sleep. Sleep is very important to me and my partner. She's a flight attendant, international flight attendant, so her sleep is terrible. And I've been researching into what can we use, and NuCalm has been the best. It's been the only thing that's helped her. I found, you know, remarkable differences. From night one, and more recently come in as a small shareholder. So I'm really, really excited about this one. I want to find out as much as I can about NuCalm, and I want to share this with my audience. So thanks, guys, for jumping on. Let's jump straight into it. Jim, tell us about you and the team behind NuCalm.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. Um, I'm 55 years old. I'm a proud father of three beautiful, healthy girls. Some would call that karma. 22, 19, and 17. Two in college in Florida, and one a senior in high school. I was raised with an identical twin brother, so I shared a baby womb for 9 months with another man, and I was born 4 minutes before him. And that's part of the character development for me personally. I grew up as a wrestler, did martial arts with my brother, and always had a strong tendency to competition within confines and within rules, but loved to compete, had a significant ambition physically. And interestingly enough, David Poole has been my consigliere and my right-hand man in this enterprise for 15 years. So I know the adage is you never do business with family, and but when you're an identical twin, sometimes it works to your advantage. So the team behind us has evolved. The company's been around for 34 years. 34 years. So the beginning of this whole process began in 1990. And the impetus behind the invention of NuCalm was all built out of necessity. And that necessity was to find a way to help manage the stress, the fear, the anxiety of trauma. It's not a great topic. People don't like to talk about trauma, but trauma is real. And the consequence of having a traumatized brain really leads to a significant depreciation in your psychological, emotional, physical health. And so Dr. Blake Hallawi was an amazing neuroscientist, quantum physicist, naturopath, had a really good, interesting educational pathway, and then found himself in Texas working in a clinical environment, helping people coming out of the theater of war. And if you said, hey, Blake, why did you spend 19 years of your life trying to invent a technology to help resolve stress? And the answer was simple. Jim, conventional therapy today is not helping the traumatized brain. It is masking the symptoms, and eventually that person fatigues and they take their own life. And as I sit across the table from somebody that I care about and I want to see succeed, I can't do narcotic-based pharmaceuticals and pseudo-cognitive behavioral therapy knowing that the outcome is not going to be the right outcome. So Blake, I met in 2015 or 2009. And I love Blake. And anybody who met him knew you were in the presence of an exceptionally gifted human being. His intellect was superior to any human being I'd ever met. In fact, I would argue of our 52 medical advisors, collectively, their wisdom and experience, Blake matched that collection of 52 leading doctors. So he was intellectually beyond the scope of comprehension. But it was his heart and his compassion and his desire to do well for humanity that led him to this process. So think about this. You have a man of intellectual capacity that's just phenomenal. And it took him 19 years to figure this out. What does that tell you? It tells you that the complexity of the human brain and the human brain's ability to compensate for anything you do to it When we meticulously tried to redesign or reverse engineer all the developments to the original NuCalm, there was so much meticulous specificity. You just were like, how would one human being do this? How would you even know that if I do this to the brain's going to do this? Then I'm going to do this, the brain's going to do this. So it took Blake 19 years to figure this out. Now, for all of Blake's wisdom, compassion, and incredible intellect, he had Asperger's. So a neuroscientist, quantum physicist with Asperger's is not really in a position to bring an idea to the world.
Hmm.
It's just not going to happen. So somehow, some way, the way the universe works, in 2008, I had consummated the largest private equity acquisition in the history of the dental industry, dentistry. And it was Credit Suisse, and it was close to a $300 million acquisition. And the company's target was Denmat in Santa Maria, California. My consulting firm did the entire investment thesis beginning in May of 2007. We consummated the deal in January of 2008. We did the road show, secured the funding, and then post acquisition, I ran the growth strategy in the company for Credit Suisse. Now, Dr. Hallawi had been working with traumatized veterans, but he said, I can help chronic stress, but I can't see the immediacy of the impact that this technology is having. Where can I find an environment where I can test the acute ability of this technology to help in an acute stress response? Dentistry. So imagine when you ask a human being, an adult, to lie on their back, open their mouth, and have a stranger put their hands and instruments in your mouth, you elicit a fight or flight response. Your central nervous system says, hey, this doesn't feel right. My mouth is protected. I eat and I survive. I communicate. This is key. And it's interesting because we don't even think about this. But if I reach for your mouth, you immediately turn. You protect your mouth. So Dr. Hallawi started working with high fear dental patients with a gentleman who was doing sedation. So people would come in and he would knock them out with oral or IV sedation. And so he starts working on these patients. And the doctor, Dr. Ed Staffel, is like, this technology is unbelievable. I am not putting any drugs on these people. I'm working on them, doing very advanced complex surgeries, and they are in this state, wearing an eye mask and listening to NuCalm. This is amazing. Blake, you have to bring this to the world. Well, Blake's like, okay, but how would I even do that? Well, that's where this intersection happens. Dr. Staffel happened to be a key opinion leading dentist. And he said, have you ever heard of Bob Ibsen? And Blake's like, no. He said, well, Bob Ibsen just made a couple $100 million. Why don't you find the firm that did that for him? That's what Blake did. He found our firm. And in June of 2009, we took an unsolicited call from a neuroscientist in Texas with a southern drawl who was kind, who was smart, and said this simple statement, Daniel, Jim, I've invented a technology that quickly, safely, and predictably relaxes the mind and body within minutes without side effects. I'd never heard that before. I'd never heard that statement out loud. I was like, I don't even know what that means. Then he explained the science, and I knew even less about what it meant. And for the next 10 weeks, we had a weekly call. Part of it was developing a friendship out of intrigue. If you're a human being and you have any intellectual capacity, learning about your human brain is fascinating. So we had all these talks, and eventually I felt compelled to try it out. I wasn't seeing that this was going to be something our firm wanted to engage in. I wasn't really getting that feel because I really didn't understand it. But something told me, you can't say no, Jim, until you try it, because you can't really articulate what this is all about. So I got on a plane, I went to Texas, and in a doctor's office, I tried what was then, the NuCalm technology. And it was an unbelievably profound experience. I was in the chair for about 35 minutes. I remember with great specificity, I had an itch on my nose, and I remember lying there. I had just come in from international travel, so I was tired. And I remember having an itch on my nose, and I remember thinking, you have an itch on your nose, itch it. And you're like, who cares? And then my brain would wander. And then I'd be like, hey, you have a really big itch on your nose, itch it. And I was like, I don't even know where my arms are. So it was a really cool experience. I got up. I said, okay, I have no idea what you just did to me, but I feel really good. And there's no reason I should. So explain this to me. So the next day, Daniel, we spent 10 hours in a boardroom, and Dr. Hallawi went through the invention, the logic of the biochemistry and the physics behind what was then to become the NuCalm technology. And I remember early on in the relationship, as we were still exploring this, we were bringing in our accountants, we were bringing in our intellectual property attorneys, we were bringing in our team to figure out if this is something that we were going to engage in. And at some point in early October, I remember looking at Dr. Hallawi, and he said, Jim, you have TBIs, you have traumatic brain injuries. I said, well, I was hospitalized 14 times with concussions from martial arts and wrestling. Some really significant concussions. One wrestling match, I was unconscious for 48 minutes. So I was like, okay. He said, you're not going to be able to tie your shoes when you're 50 years old. So let me help you. In fact, let me make a deal with you, Mr. Poole. I said, what's that, Blake? He said, I'll keep you healthy. You make me wealthy. We shook hands, and that was it. So in October 26th of 2009, I came on board as chairman of the board, president and CEO of a neuroscience company that had 19 years of invention, but had yet to bring a product to market. And that's the genesis of how this all began.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very exciting. So tell us more about NuCalm. So since 2009 to now, you've disrupted yourself, you've changed the company, and where it started to where it is now is different. Tell us about that journey.
It's been fascinating. And I've already had a few ghostwriters. We've already authored a couple of manuscripts for books. The story of a hero's journey is fascinating. It's fascinating to me, and I've been living it. But the real fascination is you don't know what you don't know. I've never pioneered anything. I didn't know the complexity of pioneering, but I do now. When you pioneer something, one of the biggest challenges that you have is that the central nervous system, your brain, demands a comparison. If there's nothing for my brain to compare it to, I become paralyzed. My brain can't understand it. Well, for NuCalm, no one's ever really going to understand the complexity of the science. And early on, we were forced to kind of try to educate people on it. And that was a really big problem for us because there is no comparison to something that's never been done before. Mm. One of the things that for me personally, I knew intuitively we were onto something. Not just because Blake was smart and it took him a long time to figure it out, but stress and sleep and, the incompatibility of stress and sleep is just such a profound problem. And until you start diving into it, like you've been doing research on sleep. And when you start diving into it, you're like, wow, there's a lot of complexity here. Well, stress and sleep are hugely complex problems. And they're really nefarious problems, and they have a significant negative consequence on all of us if we don't take care of ourselves. In November 5th of 2009, Credit Suisse at that point owned the Hard Rock Hotel in Las Vegas. And remember, I had just run Denmac Corporation, so I had access to the best dentists, oral maxillofacial surgeons, periodontal surgeons, endodontists in the world. And I convened 12 of them to room 507 at the Hard Rock Hotel in November of 2009. And I had built a 100-slide PowerPoint, and it was walking through the complexities of the human brain. Why the anxious response exists in a dental patient, what's happening in their brain physiology, their chemistry, why their masseters and their temporalis muscles are tight, well, all these things. And I showed them this presentation, and it was complex, but they understood it. And then they would try NuCalm. That is how we started the commercialization of this product. In a hotel room in Las Vegas with 12 world-leading dentists, and what we did was really simple. Do you like the concept of what we're sharing with you? Yes. Is it fascinating? Yes. Would you like to join our advisory board and begin doing research to help us understand this better? Yes. Okay. We are not going to buy your voice. We're not going to influence your behavior. We're not going to tell you what research is designed to do, and you're not getting this for free. You will buy this at a discounted rate, and then we will collaborate. We will train your team, etc. So in 2009, we launched a highly regulated FDA Class 3 medical device. Now, Class 3 medical device is the highest regulated device in the world, same as a heart stent. And the reason that it is with the FDA is because it's brain science, and the FDA doesn't take any risks with the brain. So this is a 4-component process. It's clumsy, and it's $6,000. And we begin in dentistry in November of 2009. And the path to market is really simple. We do CME and we do CDE, so continuing education. I fly around the country and I lecture about applied neuropsychobiology, very advanced neuroscience, and begin showcasing how the brain works, what's going on, and then how NuCalm and this technology helps down-regulate the stress response. We had one product back then, which is now currently called Rescue. One product, and that product was designed to slow down your brainwave function. So before we get into more of the evolution of NuCalm, let me just take a brief minute to explain how the brain works in this range. The brain, your brain, my brain, Matthew's brain, all of our brains oscillate in a frequency range of 41 hertz. What does that mean? That means there's a frequency, a waveform, and it's 41 hertz. And now what's interesting is that where your brain is oscillating, your body and your behavior is commensurate with that frequency. So there are 5 categories of brainwave function. There's delta, the slowest waveform, high amplitude, low wave. That is deep sleep. When your brainwave is oscillating between 0.5 hertz and 4 hertz, we know what you're doing. You are in dreamless like deep sleep. You're in delta. When the frequency goes faster, it's called theta, T-H-E-T-A. Theta is the healing zone. Theta is the restorative zone in your sleep. And theta is called the healing zone because when your brain is oscillating between 4 hertz and 7 hertz, which is also a lucid dream state, your cells are cleaning their toxins and doing their cellular maintenance. Your mitochondria is being restored. The reason that sleep is so important is that the mind, the cells, and the body need to restore and repair. And in that space of theta, that specific frequency, that's when the body's healing when you're sleeping. When you go a little faster, it's called alpha. 8 hertz to 12 hertz, creativity being in the zone in the first stage of sleep. So there's 3 categories of brainwave in the sleep architecture, alpha, theta, delta. Then we go into beta brainwave function. Beta is the broadest range of function. 12 hertz to 15 hertz, you're awake, but you're not mentally that excited. 15 to 20 hertz is called the learning zone. Yes, there is a zone that's applied to learning. When your frequency is between 15 and 20 hertz, specifically 18.4 hertz, your brain is able to interpret new information better, encode new information, problem solve better, and retain it to memory. It's the learning zone. It'd be nice if we knew that because we've wasted a lot of time in our life trying to learn something when our frequency is out of balance. Then we get into where most of us live our life. 20 to 25 hertz is a faster frequency. Agitation, distraction, fear, stress, worry, anxiety. 25 to 30 is a higher level of agitation, impatience, distraction, fear, stress, anxiety, and worry. This is where most of us live. And if we think about this for a second, there's a reason we're distracted, because our frequency is going too fast. There's a reason that we're not breathing deep, because we have shallow breath, because our resources are in this panic state. And then 30 to 38 hertz is pure cognitive dissociation, fight or flight. You are in a primal, I need to stay alive mode. And we see this in near-death experiences, or we even see this in fights. But if someone is in this complete fear zone, if you look them in the eyes, they look like a shark. They're cognitively not available. There's no blood flow here. So that's 30 to 38 hertz. Then above that is a fascinating nuance of the brain. It's called gamma, 39 to 41 hertz. And in that state, high intensity, mistake-free focus. That's fascinating. You mean above the highest level of stress is this cool zone that's commensurate with being a meditating monk and high intensity? Wow, I'd like to get there. Well, it's really hard to get there. So that is the landscape and the operating system of the human brain. Blake's brilliance and the genius behind NuCalm was this. I don't care how I do this. I must slow down your brainwave to theta. That's the trick. That's the 19 years of invention. If I can take your brain, say you're traumatized and you're constantly in fear, your brain's going fast. If I can slow it down and put it into theta, I know something that everybody else knows in science. That's the healing zone. So the whole game and the whole trick of NuCalm was to how do I down regulate and hold your brainwave function in theta. So back then, 2009, we had two pathways. Your brain and your body communicate in two pathways, chemical messaging and electrical messaging. The electrical messaging was in the form of physics and algorithms in software. The software we used underneath music. So we built music on top of software. Then we put headphones on and we used your ears as a carrier to present your brain with a signal. Now here's where it gets cool. You can't hear what we're doing. The physics and the signal we're presenting is inaudible to the human ear. We put music in there because we wanted to create an experience that was nice and enjoyable. Okay? So the music is an envelope and it's carrying 1 to 2 gigabytes of mathematics. Think about that. A song is 5 to 10 megabytes. One NuCalm track is 1.5 gigabytes, 335 times larger than a song. What does that tell you? A song can't change the mental state of a human being. If I have stage 4 cancer and I'm consumed with stress and fear of dying and I'm just can't get any relief, the brainwave's going really fast. If I listen to mellow music, my brain doesn't go into this state of healing. Music cannot change our state. We don't understand this because we don't understand how our brain works. But mathematics and physics and algorithms can if presented in the right manner. So early on with NuCalm 1.0, we had 4 tracks. They were 30 minutes each. You put headphones on, and all this math and science underneath the music presented your brain with a signal. And we simply said, hey, Daniel, you're going really fast right now. We're going to start you here, and then in 8 minutes, we're going to take you down to theta, and we're going to hold you just above deep sleep. Because in that zone, Daniel, is the healing zone. And we're going to give your brain and your body and your cells the opportunity to do what it knows how to do if we can liberate your monkey mind from controlling your body. That's the genius behind what Dr. Hallawi figured out.
Yeah.
So that path took years of trial and error figuring this out. The other path, Daniel, was the biochemistry. Early on, NuCalm 1.0 was fascinating and it was really powerful. And in doing this, we're like, okay, if you think about this, we're selling a $6,000 FDA Class 2 medical device in medical surgeries. We're doing this in surgery. So there's no general anesthesia. They're going into an operating room or an operatory or, getting their wisdom teeth taken out, whatever the surgery is. And they are put on an eye mask, headphones, and they're listening to this physics. And our job is to take that patient down within a few minutes. We need to take you to this state of relaxed calm. And we only have a few minutes to do it. Neurobiofeedback's been around for almost 90 plus years. It has never been predictable, not across the person, not across the population. So if I go and have neurobiofeedback done today, it may have a resounding effect on me. It may not. What's the difference? Adrenaline. The body's natural resistance is adrenaline. And your adrenal cortex and your ability to be resistant is variable. That's why we see things like a mom gets in a car accident and her kid is trapped underneath the tire of a car, and a woman who's 120 pounds can lift up a car. That's the body's natural adrenaline. When we go into a surgery, our body naturally knows, I don't want you operating on me. And we have a surge of adrenaline. In surgery, you can see, doesn't matter. You can see a 120-pound female metabolized through general anesthesia in 16 minutes because her body is just going crazy resisting it. Blake understood this, and he said, if we don't downregulate the body's adrenaline, the physics won't be as predictable. So early on in 2009, we had a whole biochemical aspect to it. It had chewable supplementation and it had a cranial electrotherapy stimulation device, a very high level microcurrent device with patches behind your ears. And it created this low level microcurrent and it helped the biochemistry work. So that component, those four components were NuCalm for 2009 to 2021. So for 12 years, it was a complicated four-component process where we used biochemistry and physics to engineer and basically take over and say, hey, we don't care if you have stage 4 cancer. We don't care if you have Alzheimer's. We don't care if you're traumatized, you have addiction, you're a professional athlete, a military operator, you're 2 years old or you're 100 years old. We're going to take your frequency wherever it is right now. We're simply going to guide it down into theta. And we're going to hold you there until your body says, I've had enough healing for the day. Thank you. So I know this is a lot of information and I know it's fascinating and I know some of this stuff is new. But let me just take a step back and say this. In the history of humankind, in our history as humans, we have either discovered or created ways to change our mental state. We're not even aware of this. There's a lot of things we're not aware of. Today in 2024, if we're feeling mentally lethargic in the afternoon, we'll go get an espresso, a Red Bull, a Monster Energy, a Dunkin' Donuts, a Starbucks, a coffee. If we're in psychic pain, we'll drink alcohol. We'll take recreational drugs. If we feel depressed, we'll take antidepressants. If we feel anxious, we'll take anti-anxiety. If we're having sleeping challenges, we'll take sleeping pills. You see, the human brain and how we live, we are incapable of regulating our brainwave function. So for the first time in human history, Dr. Hallawi has invented a predictable, safe, and reliable way for you, for me, for everybody to regulate your brainwave function. The magnitude of what we've created is far beyond my comprehension. There are times I sit here and I think, wow, what have we done? I won't know the magnitude. I'll be dead. And maybe centuries from now, they'll look back and say, wow, this is where it changed for humans. Because you could literally do a simple experiment, and on your kitchen table, you could put coffee, alcohol, marijuana, cocaine, antidepressants, anti-anxiety, sleeping pills, and on the other side, you can put the NuCalm mobile app. And guess what? That's what we've done. We have figured out a way to change your state by dialing up or dialing down your brainwave. 4 years ago, Daniel, we were one product, Rescue, designed to heal, designed to take you to theta and hold you there. It's 2024. 2015, I remember talking to Blake and I said, Blake, it's amazing what we're doing. I can go into an operatory and I can watch a barbaric surgery. I don't know if you guys have ever seen a tooth being extracted from a human skull, but the amount of torque involved is frightening. You're like, I think you're going to take that person's head off. And I remember I was in Chicago and the Dr. Lewis Kaufman was doing stand-up dentistry. This is 2011. He had a high fear patient in his chair, African American, 6 teeth being removed. When we're fearful, we don't go and get the care we need, and that care presents problems. So he had to extract 6 teeth in one sitting. And I remember I'm standing in the operatory, and he's torquing this guy's head, and I'm looking at him, and he goes, "This is amazing, Jim. Look how relaxed his head is." And I was like, what is going on here? When we were done with the surgery, I walked in. The man had gauze in his mouth, blood on his chin. He's sitting there and he just looks at me. He's like, "Thank you. That was amazing." What? So when you've witnessed probably 1,000 surgeries, I've witnessed tons of blood and gore and surgery, and the person is simply on NuCalm. You know you're onto something. You're like, how did we do this? So early on in 2015, I remember talking to Blake. I said, Blake, if we can do that, can we take them asleep? If we can take them to sleep, can we take them to focus at 18.4 hertz? If we can take them to focus, can we take them to 40 hertz? And Blake, being the infinitesimally pathologically optimistic neuroscientist, said, yes, of course. I just didn't know how we were going to do it and how long it was going to take. One of the cool things about working with Dr. Hallawi is you always knew you're going to get there, but with his Asperger's, you never knew the path. There was no path. It just kind of happened.
Yeah.
So in the last 4 years, Daniel, has been a seismic shift in our company. And all of this is by design. You mentioned something earlier and said, wow, you guys have disrupted your own industry and your own company. Yes, we have. And the reason is simple. When you find something so profound that literally can change every human being, I can't tell you how many times that I have hugged and felt the soul of a human being with tears on my shoulders and just amazing things we've done by liberating a human from stress. Whether it's stage 4 cancer, whether it's Alzheimer's, whether it's surgical interventions, it doesn't matter. What we can do for humans is so profound and incredible. We can't just leave it to the exclusive. From 2009 to 2021, we were pretty exclusive. We served the United States Department of Defense, Navy SEALs, Special Forces, Air Force Special Operations Command, high elite operators. We served the Department of Justice, FBI, FBI Hostage Rescue Team, SWAT, Border Patrol. We served pilots. We served professional athletes. We served doctors. We served cancer patients. We weren't doing enough. With a $6,000 complicated medical device, you're not helping enough. And in 2016, I challenged our organization and said, hey guys, we have to figure this out. I don't know how it's going to happen, but we're going to get to a place where this becomes affordable, accessible, and most importantly, easy to use. So just 4 years ago, we were a $6,000 single product company. Today, we're 6 products. From 1 product to 6 is amazing.
Yeah.
We're 50 cents a day monthly subscription. I mean, it is incredible what we've done, and we don't stop and look in the rearview mirror a lot. When you build a executive summary and you go out and raise capital, you have to tell the story, and that's really the only time that we stop, take a breath, and say, wow, this has been a really incredible, interesting few years. But it didn't all work out that way. It took us 9 years to invent Deep Sleep, the most sophisticated physics platform we've ever launched. And the reason is we have to make this easy. And for Deep Sleep, we didn't want anybody to have to wear a headphone.
Yep.
You can see compliance issues from CPAP. So I'm oxygen deprived. I've got obstructive sleep apnea. I buy the device, but it doesn't do me any good if I'm not using the device. So if it's not easy, humans will find a reason not to take care of themselves. So it has to be easy.
Yeah.
I would argue that for all the incredible neuroscience that we've done, 34 years of pioneering the most complex science in the world, proven by patents, medical advisory, military approval, we have all the external proof you could ever ask for. But really, in the last 4 years, we're more a social psychology company because we're just figuring out how do we make this so easy so that we can just take care of you. You don't need to know the science. Most people today, if you said, hey, do you have a microwave in your home? They say, yes. How does it work? I have no idea. What does it do? It conveniently heats up my food. That's the analogy we're going for.
Yep.
I don't ever care for you to know how NuCalm works. You're not going to figure it out anyway.
Yep.
You can look at the patents. You can look at the research. You can't even read it. It's like, is this in Greek? I just want you to go to the app and say, you know what? I'm feeling pretty crappy today. I'd like to feel better. I'm going to put on rescue and I'm going to feel better. Or I'm going to work. I'm going to put focus on and I'm going to crank through my work. So it took us 9 years to invent Deep Sleep. It took us 7 years to invent Focus, 6 years to invent Ignite, 5 years to invent Flow State. Ignite's fascinating. Ignite is 41 hertz, the highest frequency of brainwave function. Ignite will elicit dopamine. It'll activate your gross motor cortex and your sensory motor rhythm. It'll increase your olfactory, your peripheral vision. When you listen to Ignite, you are put into a high intensity, mistake-free peak performance mental state. And the crazy thing about that, Daniel, is with rescue, you're in this lucid dream state. You're not really even self-aware. You're kind of just floating in space. You don't really know what's happening. When you put Ignite on for 13 or 14 minutes, you're listening to something, you can feel your body changing. You're like, all I'm doing is listening to something. How's this doing this? Ignite, we brought to market in 2016. Now, I was introduced to Tony Robbins, who I was just at his home 2 days ago here in Florida in 2015. And the more I got to know Tony, the more I appreciated his incredible ability to coalesce complex information into digestible information to share with others. And he's a very passionate person and very intellectually gifted. And early on in my experience with Tony, he became one of our top customers within like 6 weeks. He paid our company $54,000 and bought nine $6,000 medical devices. And it got onto my dashboard, and I was like, why does this guy have 9 systems? It doesn't make any sense. Is he selling them? He's not a doctor. He doesn't have a clinic. So one of our managers called his manager and said, hey, what are you guys doing? Are you selling these? And the manager said, no. Tony loves your product. He refused to go a day without it. He has 5 homes, his own jet, and the others are backup. I'm like, what? This guy's crazy. So I call his doctor, who introduced me to him, and said, hey, Michael, this guy's nuts. I got to meet him. Set up a meeting. I flew down to Florida, and I spent the day with him, with Tony. 9 months later, a Premier League team had reached out to me and said, hey, Mr. Poole, we love NuCalm. And this is just rescue back then. It was called NuCalm. Our players are healing faster. The jet lag, the travel, they feel amazing. But can you make something that'll get them excited to get on the pitch? Now here I am, the CEO, the visionary, but I got Blake in my corner. So my answer typically is, of course we can. I have no idea how. I have no idea how long it's going to take. But my answer is always the same. Of course we can. There is no no. So I get off the phone with him. I call Blake and say, Blake, this is what we want. Okay. August of 2016, we get our first kind of demo track. And it's 13 minutes and 47 seconds long. And I put it on. And my wife comes in and she said, what are you doing? I said, what? She's like, you're at the computer and you're going like this. You're like pounding on the keyboard. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm not even aware of this. So I call Tony. I say, Tony, we're launching something to the elite military and professional athletes. Are you interested? Well, I already know how he thinks. So he's like, yeah, send it to me. It's 13 minutes and 47 seconds long. I press send. Phone rings. 15 minutes. Poole, what the F is this? It's Ignite, man. He's like, I've never heard anything like it. I said, Tony, we have the only patented neuroscience in the world. You're never going to hear anything like what we do. It doesn't exist. He said, what can we do? I said, we can do anything. So he calls me up a couple months later. He says, Ted Leonsis is my neighbor. He owns the Washington Capitals. Can we train the Washington Capitals together? So he and I fly to Toronto in a hotel room, the Ritz-Carlton. We train the Washington Capitals. Tony hands me the training, master tape, when we're done, 2.5 hours. He says, Jim, you know what to do. Do what you do. So we take that tape, we splice 100,000 words and over 240,000 syllables, and we stitch back his words. We build this physics platform that's 14 minutes long, begins at 15 hertz, and the last 3 minutes we call pure warrior brain. You're at 41 hertz. I mean, you're flying. And so his words, training the Washington Capitals, our soundtrack and our physics, we at that point in 2016 create the strongest mind control ever done before. We have so much fun doing it. The next year, Tony says, hey, Jim, Peter Guber is one of my best friends. Let's go train the Golden State Warriors. Okay, so we go to a hotel room in Oakland for 5 hours this time, and we train the Golden State Warriors. Repeat. Do the same thing. So on today's NuCalm app, in the Ignite journey, there's 5 tracks. Yeah. 2 of them have Tony Robbins. 1, training the Washington Capitals, who won the Stanley Cup. 2, training the Golden State Warriors, who won the NBA World Championship. So what we can do is profound. We can put your mind in any state we want. In 2015, after 5 years of research with stage 4 cancer in the Chicago Blackhawks, 2 populations of diverse backgrounds, research analyzed by Harvard Medical School and NASA mathematicians, Dr. Chung Kang Pang and Dr. Norton Hu Wang, We showcase irrefutable quantified evidence to the United States Patent Office, and we were awarded the first and only patent in the world for balancing the health of the human autonomic nervous system. Now, most people don't know what that means, so let me simplify this. The autonomic nervous system manages your stress versus your rest response. It manages your digestion, your heart, your lungs, but it also manages fear, stress, anxiety, depression, and worry. That part of our brain, the autonomic nervous system, we were awarded the only patent in the world for balancing and maintaining the health of that part of your brain. That is incredible. To this day, that's incredible. In patent law, it is now open to the world since July of 2015. Good luck trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
In August of 2021, we were awarded another significant patent, and that is systems and methods used to elicit a state change in a human being. Amazing. Another 6 years of research. So, what does that tell you? It tells you that an independent body has gone through all the research and all the literature in the history of Earth and said, before now, this has never existed. No prior art. And the data you've presented showcases exactly what you guys say you do, you do. So today, in 2024, any company that says, hey, listen to this and it changes your state is either lying, and chances are they are, since we've been here for 34 years, or they're infringing on our patent. That is the beauty of having those two anchors as our external validation done by some of the best scientists in the world who are not paid by our company. We have been honorable, integrous, and forthright in our ability just to do the right thing, find really smart people who want to do the right thing with us, and showcase irrefutable evidence. So on the NuCalm website, you can go to the About piece on the top nav bar, scroll down, you'll see science. You will see some of the most profound research ever done before. And that's 14 years of research with statistical biophysicists and medical oncologists, and you name it, we've been doing that research. There's only one product in the world that was an FDA Class C medical device, Health Canada approved, military approved, NSS certified for sport, and has the only patents in the world. We stand alone, we have stood alone, we've pioneered something new, and we've brought this to market. The challenge, Daniel, has been this. We're a neuroscience company. When you step up to try to figure out how to effectively manage the brain, you'd better bring a tank to a knife fight, because the brain is so complex. It took us 32 years, $45 million of aggregate capital from selling $33 million of product and raising $12 million in external capital. All of that money, all those resources went into figuring this out. And in July of 2022, we launched our sixth and final product. So we now have 6 products on one mobile app that manage all 5 categories of your brain. Delta, theta, alpha, beta, gamma. We have 6 products. Deep sleep, rescue, power nap, flow state, focus, ignite. We now have given you a remote control for your brain in the palm of your hand. Right here. A mobile app. You're welcome, humanity, because it's incredible what we've accomplished and the pace of what we're doing now. We're literally rolling down a hill and our snowball's getting faster. Things are getting easier. We're getting more efficient. We're constantly learning and we're constantly growing.
So how does that translate into the numbers? Tell us about, the revenue. Tell us about the growth, that sort of thing. Because you've got
Before
72,000 users.
Yeah.
before you get into that, Daniel, let me just say, I mean, you've listened to Jim explain the evolution of NuCalm and how he got involved in this, and the value proposition in a landscape worldwide. Everybody's affected with stress management in one way, or anxiety or sleep deprivation, one way or another. Jim and NuCalm stand totally uniquely apart from anybody else that is dealing this, where they have passion